Hey, welcome back to another activity video. In this video, we're making another drum beat, but instead of programming the beat using MIDI, we're going to be using only audio clips in the arrangement timeline. And the reason why this is going to be beneficial for you is because, number one, you get extra features when you're editing audio clips on the arrangement timeline, things like reversing audio. Plus, you also get some really useful visual feedback as you're massaging those sounds and creating your drum beat or loop or whatever you might be doing. So by the end of this activity, you should have one or more new clips added to your elements directory. So let's get started. First, I'm going to delete the MIDI tracks here and toggle over to the arrangement view. Now I'm going to search for the sounds that I'm going to be using in my beat. That is a kick drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, and then maybe some sort of a percussion sound. And as I'm composing this, I'm going to be using the duplicate and vary function, or the duplicate and vary technique. The only difference really is that I'm going to be using audio instead of MIDI. So let's find those kick drum samples first. So I'll just click on the samples area, click up in the search bar and find search for kick. That works. I'll drag that onto my first track. Now I'm going to find a snare drum. Snare. That's interesting. I like the reverb on it, so I'll just drag that on there. Even though it looks like a little loop, that's all right because we're going to be editing this down anyway. Next, I'm going to find a hat. That's short for hi-hat. And I just want something really short. I like that, so I'll just add that on there. Then I'm going to find some type of percussion. That's like a wood block or, like a snare rim. Let's go wood block, yeah. Or maybe I'll just go perk and see what comes up. All right, let's use that one. Okay, so I've got all the pieces that I need. I'm going to grab these tracks, I'll select them all, and I'll press Command G or Control G on a PC to add them to a group. I'll rename that group drums, and I usually like having all capital letters in my group so that if I export all of the stems, then I know which is a group export and then which is actually a track export. Next, I'm going to change the color of all these tracks to white. That's just a personal preference because it makes it a little bit easier to read the names of each of these tracks and clips. I'll do the same to the clips by just right-clicking and choosing Assign Track Color to grouped tracks and clips. And now you'll see that everything's nice and clean and organized looking here. Let's start with the kick drum first. I'm not going to do anything super special here, but I do know that I want to create an 8 or 16 bar loop. So I'll start by creating a 1 bar loop or a 1 bar measure by just duplicating that kick drum 4 times. Now I've double checked before I duplicated that my grid subdivision value is at quarter notes. By looking down in the bottom right hand corner, you can see the fraction 1/4. If you need to change this, just as a reminder, you can right click and select something from your context menu, whether it's quarter notes, 8th notes, 16th notes, what have you. Alternatively, you can use Command 1 and 2 on a Mac or Control 1 and 2 on a PC if you want to increase and decrease those grid subdivisions. So what have I got here? I'm just going to create a little loop. Okay, great. Let's work on the snare drum now. Now this one's going to take a little bit of work because I've got a few different snare hits here. Actually, they look pretty much the same, so I'm just going to create a slice point here and delete the big portion of this clip. Then I'm going to zoom in and just shorten the length here. But I'm going to be careful not to shorten it too far, because if I add the edge of that clip to the very beginning of this sample, you'll notice that this clip edge has a fade on it, and you can visually see that that's actually taking away some volume from a very important portion of that snare drum hit, the attack phase. And the attack phase of any sound is what makes that sound feel snappy and punchy and oomphy. So I'm just going to make sure that that's dragged over just a little bit, and you can see it's already affecting my kick drum too. So I'm going to pull that back on the kick drum as well. on all of these clips before I'm doing any more duplicating. I may as well just solve the issue right away. So let's have a look at the positioning of the snare drum. I think I want to just create a basic 4 on the floor. So boom, cha, boom, cha. Here we go. So I'll move that over. Cool, that's actually the perfect snare for this. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this snare drum, and it looks like I've got something happening here. Okay, so I've got the foundation of the beat started. I'm going to just get rid of some of that extra stuff. Let's work on the hi-hat now. So I'll add the hi-hat in between the kick and the snare. I'm going to do sort of like a boots and cats, boots, cats, boots, cats. Activate that track. Zoom in to adjust that fade edge again. Look at that. There we go. And let's just have a listen to this. Okay, so then I'll duplicate that. So one way that I like to duplicate is I like to add my selection right at the beginning of that sound, right at that transient point, and then I'll create a selection all the way up to where I want that sound to be duplicated, so where I want the next transient to occur. And then when I hit Command D, I know for sure that's going to be the perfect length, regardless of where this is in my grid subdivision. If I'm doing more complex loops and things like that, I just want to make sure that it's going to be repeating at the same length, the same distance in time. So here we go. Let's listen to this. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let's duplicate this hat track. I think I'm going to try to do something kind of a typical housey move where it goes, the hat goes. So I'm going to duplicate this hat track by just clicking on the track title, pressing Command D. That's going to duplicate the track and all of the information that's on it. And I'm going to zoom in and just slide these clips over a little bit so that I get that. All right, my first guess was wrong. Hey, that's cool. So now I'm going to create some sort of a change with this second clip because I want it to be just slightly different, either like a lower volume or a higher volume or maybe a lower pitch. And this is something that you get to do when you're using the arrangement view and editing clips. So now that I've got all these clips selected on this second hi-hat, I'm just going to use Shift-Tab, and that's going to toggle me into my detail area. You'll see that I'm not seeing a waveform because I have a multi-selection here, but you do see that it says 4 audio clips are selected, and that means that I'm going to be making an adjustment to all 4 of these clips at the same time. So I'm going to press play around with that pitch knob there, and we'll see what we can find. Alright, so I've decreased that by 9 semitones, and you'll notice that as I'm increasing and decreasing the pitch, that the size of the clips are actually changing. That's because in this current mode where I don't have warp selected, it's actually has to either play that clip faster or slower in order to increase or decrease the pitch. This is just the same way as like slowing down a vinyl record to make a lower pitch, or speeding it up so that it's like a chipmunk. Okay, so we've got this here. -9 is what I had it at. -9. Okay, that sounds good. I may or may not keep that, but we'll find out. Next thing I'm going to do here is just tidy this up a little bit, and then we'll see what we've got with our percussion. Maybe I will actually create a duplication of this because we're doing a duplicate and vary, so I'm going to be making some variations along the whole 8 bars. I don't want to give it all away at once, so let's start by duplicating this section. So there are a couple functions that you can use with this that you'll find useful. So number one is we can actually create a selection over all of the clips that we'd like to adjust by just clicking kind of in the bottom portion of each track lane. and then dragging down, that'll create that nice time selection. And then you can press Command D, and that will actually duplicate all of the tracks at the same time. It's going to be really important for you to make sure that you've got your grid setting set up and you're actually creating a correct length time selection, because if you, for example, have your grid deactivated by pressing Command 4, you'll notice down in the corner it says off. And if you try to create a time selection that's maybe a little bit off, then you can see that it's not lining up to the grid and it's not going to sound the best. So just a little word of warning there. So I'm going to turn that back on, and that's the first way of duplicating. The second way that you can duplicate is actually by duplicating time. This is a really, really useful tool, and you can actually duplicate, cut, copy, and paste time, and I'll show you what that does right now. So instead of selecting all of the tracks here, what I can do is just select a small portion of time, like maybe on this track here, and if I go Shift Command D, it's Shift Control D on a PC, you'll see it's duplicating that piece of time and pushing everything over. This is really useful if you're creating some sort of like a fill or something like that. So like, for example, something like this. Interesting. Of course, you can also cut and paste time. So if I just wanted this amount of time cut, I could add Shift to my cut command, Shift Command X. Of course, it's Shift Control X on a PC. And oh no, it's disappeared. But now I can paste this by using Shift Command V or Shift Control V on a PC. Boom. And that's inserted that piece of time right where my insert marker was. In this case, I don't want that. I want something that's a little bit easier to do. So I'm just going to duplicate the length of this here. And so now I've got a 2-bar loop, and I'm going to create some sort of a variation in the second half by adding or by adding or removing notes. Okay, one thing I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate this snare. I'm just going to turn down the volume. I want it to be sort of like a slapback kind of echoey thing. And you know what? I like the sound of this tail being cut off when the kick drum comes in. So I'm just going to cut that off. This is sort of like really extreme gating. And you'll know what I'm talking about with that when we start talking about mixing. And I like that so much, I'm going to actually grab a little piece of this tail, and I'm going to fill this in just kind of in between some of these kick drum sounds. It's actually going to end up sounding kind of like a percussion instrument. And I'm just holding Option while I'm dragging this. It's Control on a PC. Interesting, cool. Okay, so I think I've created a variation, so I'm going to duplicate that again, Command D, and so now I've got a 4-bar loop here, and now we have to create some sort of a selection in the second half of this. So what I will do is I'm going to grab this snare drum and drag it over. I'm actually just duplicating it by holding that Option key, Control on a PC, and now I'm going to reverse it by pressing R. And you'll notice that we get that visual feedback right away, and this is what this sounds like. Cool. But I don't want the attack of this snare, so I'm just going to shorten it a bit. And you'll notice that as I'm shortening it, it's locking to my closest grid subdivision, my snapping point. I'm going to temporarily deactivate that by holding Command on my Mac. I'm pretty sure it's Alt on a PC, but please correct me. Okay, here we go. So this is what this sounds like. Interesting. I'm actually going to shorten that a little bit more. Drag it over. I'm not locked to the grid, so I can get this pretty tight. Okay, let's do something with these hats. Maybe I'll just duplicate this a couple times. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so I've got my four bars done. I'm gonna create another duplication. That brings me up to my 8 bars. And let's incorporate that percussion section that I've got here. So just a reminder, I'm gonna be making a change to the second half of this loop by adding or subtracting sounds. And I have chosen to use this perc loop. So let's have a listen to this. Okay, that's interesting. So one thing that I really enjoy doing when I'm using some sort of a loop, or maybe I've got a field recording with a variety of sounds, is I actually like to loop inside of the clip. And this opens up opportunities for interesting polyrhythmic percussion patterns and things like that. And I'll show you how you can do that right now. So you just double click on the clip. You have to see the audio inside of the detail area here. And then basically what I'm going to do is just create a time selection. At first, it'll be random for you because you don't really know what's good. But over time, you'll kind of find lengths that tend to work. But of course, a lot of this is just kind of trial and error. So if you don't like what you hear right away, then just try something else. Okay, so I'm just going to create a time selection here, and I'm going to press Command L on my Mac, Control L on PC, and you'll notice that the loop, the actual visual feedback in the clip on the arrangement timeline has changed to represent the length of the loop that we've selected. And if you click out of the clip and you click back and you notice that all of your information is gone, just remember that you have to zoom out to see all of the information that's in the shadow zone. So let's have a listen to this, and then we'll adjust the length and the location of this loop inside of the clip until we find some sort of a percussion, sort of Austin Myers, or Austin Powers, Austin Myers, oh man, Austin Powers sort of percussion loop. And yeah, let's do this. Okay. Okay, and remember, not all of the ideas are going to work, so you got to be real sometimes. There is a little piece in here that did sound interesting, so I'm going to use a combination of this looping and also a little bit of the editing on the arrangement timeline to pull that out. So let's have a listen again. Okay, so this is a little bit weird, but you can see that these little tiny notches on the tops and bottoms of the clip are indicating where the loop is located inside of my clip. And I find that I really like this first section here. And so I'm going to actually Command E. I'm just going to slice this and delete the other portion. It's sort of a loop in a loop, I guess. So, and I'm going to duplicate that, and this is what I've got. Interesting. And now I'm going to consolidate these by selecting them all and pressing Command J. It's Control J on a Mac, or if you're holding a coffee, you can right click and just use consolidate in the context menu there. And now I'm going to just remove anything that comes up to me as sort of a red flag as being not the best. Okay, so I think I'm just going to deactivate this one. I'm going to create a selection and press 0 to deactivate that. Okay, I like the sound of that. So the last portion here, because we've reached the end of our 8-bar section, is we need to create some sort of a drum fill or something, just a little flourish. So I think I'm going to maybe do a little bit of, I'll remove some of the kicks, maybe I'll remove this snare, and maybe I'll reverse this snare to just create a little bit of like a white noise riser almost. I'm going to remove the big loud portion of this though, and then I'll turn the volume up just of the tail. This is going to be kind of an interesting sound. Oh wow, that was very loud. So I'm going to turn that down a little bit more. And the kick drum, let's see, I guess I don't really need this hat for this, but I will grab this little piece. What should I do? Maybe I'll just do a kick drum thing. I'll do like a do 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 do. Pretty sure that's 16th notes. 1 ienda, 2 ienda. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to consolidate those, and the reason why is that I can use my trusty fade edge here and create a little slope. Nice. And I'm going to turn the volume down. Cool. And I think I might do the same thing with this little piece here. But I'm going to do something just a little bit different to it. So I'll consolidate it. And then I'm going to open up the envelope area. So we're going to have a look inside of the envelopes area, depending on what your view is like. If you've got a shrunken view like this, you might see this view like a scrolling list. If you've got it sort of widened like this, then you'll see it all together here. But basically what we're looking for is the clip transposition option. So you can either select the clip transposition using this double layer drop-down menu. So you'd have to click clip and then find transposition. Alternatively, I'll just change this to something else for this demonstration. You can click on the function that you want. So if I want to adjust the pitch, I can click on pitch, toggle over to the envelope area, and you'll notice that it's switched to clip transposition. It'll always show the last parameter that you've selected, which makes it really easy to automate. So what I want is this to go and that should create some nice energy. So I'm not going to make it too much. I don't want to get too wild with this, but let's have a look. Oh yeah, cool. And I do find that this is a little bit too intense, this snare riser thing, so I'm just going to cut off a little bit more of it. Cool. Another thing that I mentioned that you can do is you can warp in the arrangement timeline, and this is something you can't really do when you're programming MIDI. So this is a new function for you actually, and one of the things that you can do is click on the clip, make sure that down in the bottom here, warp is on. and then you're going to get all these different warping options. We'll talk about that in a sec. But basically what we're going to do is I want to stretch the length of this out so that it's the entire length of this 8th bar. So I'm going to put my cursor on the left edge of this clip, and I'm going to hold Shift, click, and drag out. You'll know that you've got the right function selected because you're going to get that that little bracket, but with that little arrow that's inside, and that means that you can actually time stretch right in the timeline. Nice. So you'll notice it kind of swelled at a weird time, and that's because of our warp mode. There are a few warp modes, and we'll talk about those in more depth in the warp lesson later on in a later module. But I encourage you to go through these and experiment because they're each kind of designed for certain functions. So beats are for beats, tones and textures are really good for tones and textures. Repitching is kind of a fun sound design one, sort of like slowing down or speeding up a record player. Complex and Complex Pro are the most transparent warping functions. Transparent means that you can't tell that it's been manipulated using a computer, so it's sort of an invisible manipulation. So what I'm going to do is maybe I'll use Complex, and that will remove that weird volume swell. Nice. Okay, so I have completed the task. I've created an 8-bar loop on the arrangement timeline using only audio clips. And this is exactly what you need to do, but we're not finished the task until we've added at least one new clip into our elements directory. So I'm going to do there isn't really anything here that I want independent. Like you might say, oh, I love the way that this percussion piece sounds, and I want to save that. What you could do is save that independently inside of your elements folder by doing the following. So the first thing you need to do is consolidate this into a clip. So just select the length of the clip that you want, and I'm going to go Command J or Control J on a PC, and you'll notice that now this has created a nice tidy clip. And then what we'll do is we'll hop over into the user library and open up that elements folder just so that we can see that naming convention. And you'll see that there. We've got our BPM, our key, our mood, and our description. So in this case, I'll just click on the clip, use Command R on my Mac or Control R on a PC to switch into rename mode. I'm going to look at my tempo. It's 120, capital BPM with no space. Underscore, I don't really have a key for this sample, so I'm going to skip key. Mood, I'm going to call this groovy because it's got that woo and sort of funky. And then I'll add a hyphen, and I'm just going to put a long-winded description of this. So this is Austin Powers style tambo perk loop from core activity, just for my own reference. And I'll enter, and now I'll drag this into the elements folder, into the rhythms folder. You can see it there, and I'll press return. And now we've got this piece that we can use in perpetuity forever. Anytime we want to make a groovy, funky, Austin Powers style something or other. And I might actually use this, to be honest. Okay, the next thing that you might want to do, and this is what I actually am going to do here, is I want to consolidate all these pieces into one clip. Now I could just export this and render it and then put it back into my elements folder, but in this case I just want to enforce using resampling. What resampling does is it takes the audio from the master channel, which is this one here, anything that you're hearing basically, and it'll re-record it into an audio track. So I'm going to create an audio track. This is going to be the track that I'll be recording. I'll change my audio input to resampling, just using the I/O section here. And now I'm going to tell Ableton Live which track I'd like to record on by pressing the record arm button. That's this one here. And now I'm going to set my insert marker to the beginning of the loop and press the the arrangement record button. That's this black filled in button here. Okay, here we go. Nice. I love that. That's actually pretty good. Okay, so again, we're going to use the naming convention. We'll have a look up here. I'm going to hit Command R. We'll do 120 BPM with no space. We're going to do underscore. The mood is definitely groovy, funky, a little silly. Hyphen. Austin Powers style EDM beat. Core activity. Enter, and now I'll just drag that onto my rhythm folder. Boom, activity completed. And this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to make one or more of these beats. This is really going to be an amazing exercise for you so that you can get more familiar with editing audio in the arrangement timeline. So go ahead and do that and just keep filling up your elements folder. This is going to be so useful later on in this course and later on when you're making music and you need some type of a groovy, funky, silly Austin Powers style EDM beat or anything that you're creating, whatever style you're doing. This is just a great way of organizing your ideas. So good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.